Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Some massive news coming out of Starkville, Mississippi Friday morning as Will Rogers, one of the more prolific SEC quarterbacks we've seen over the last couple years, is expected to hit the transfer portal and use his fifth year of eligibility elsewhere. This is going to be one of the more coveted quarterbacks in this transfer portal cycle. There are a lot of teams that are going to be wanting Will Rogers' service. Going to break down what Will Rogers brings to the table, and more importantly, what are some landing spots that would be perfect fits for Will Rogers. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys in the transfer portal. It's about to heat up. We're going to be trying to break down as many of the roster moves as possible. This is something I really love talking about in terms of roster management, roster construction. Cannot thank you guys enough for all the support you guys have shown the boys. If you do enjoy the content and you enjoy the updates, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, I'm going to offer a few teams that make sense for Will Rogers as a landing spot. If y'all got any other teams I'm leaving out, let me know in the comments section. We'll chop it up there. And without further ado, let's get into Will Rogers. I want to talk about Will Rogers first, what he brings to the table. 4-year starter at Mississippi State. He has been starting since his true freshman year in Starkville, and he's been extremely productive and extremely dynamic doing so. Over 12,000 passing yards. That is second most in SEC history. You think about all the phenomenal quarterbacks that have played in that SEC conference, and Will Rogers is second in passing yards. That just tells you a little bit about what Will Rogers has done during his career in Starkville. 94 touchdowns, 28 interceptions, a 69% completion percentage. He takes care of the football. He's extremely accurate. And most SEC fans know when Will Rogers is healthy, which we did not get to see this year. I mean, he is a quarterback that can go out and win a lot of football games. Any throw on the football field, you look at that Mike Leach air raid offense that he played in most of his career, it requires you to throw the ball all around the football field. You got to be on time. You got to be accurate. You got to be able to push it downfield in the tight windows. Will Rogers was a guy that always seemed to be able to do that. And there were points during his career where he was a top 5 Heisman candidate because of the numbers that he was able to put up in Starkville. More importantly, in another conversation to have, what's interesting about Will Rogers, he's got one more year of eligibility. He only has that year of eligibility because of that COVID year. He's played all 4 years, did not redshirt one time during his time at Starkville. Only him having 1 year of eligibility, I think, is a good story for a lot of these teams in terms of you can take Will Rogers in and probably not worry about losing quarterbacks in your quarterback room, right? If you have a young quarterback, a true freshman or a sophomore that's in there, you can take Will Rogers, have him start for 1 year, and that young quarterback knows that he'll be the guy in the 2025 season, kind of a perfect stopgap quarterback if a team needs one for the 2024 year. Want to talk about a few landing spots that really make sense for Will Rogers, and I want to go down to the Miami Hurricanes first. This is a team that we've talked about going to go after a quarterback in the transfer portal, and I think Will Rogers would be a perfect fit for the Miami Hurricanes. You take a look at what their quarterback room looks like, and more importantly, we've talked about it. This Miami Hurricanes team is a quarterback away. A phenomenal defense, a ton of pass catchers around him, a good offensive line. If you're Will Rogers and you're looking at where you want to go, I mean, the Miami Hurricanes, if you go to Miami, that is a legit ACC contender immediately with Will Rogers. One of the best situations for a transfer quarterback to go to. And then you look at what their quarterback room looks like. Tyler Van Dyke sounds like he'll not be in Miami next year. Ja'Cory Brown, a lot of question marks about his future in Miami, which leaves you with the true freshman Emory Williams, who just went down with a really, really bad arm injury in that game against Florida State. You can take Will Rogers, have him start in that 2024 year, and then have Emory Williams be ready and be the guy for that 2025 season. The biggest question mark about Miami right now is if they don't take a transfer quarterback, they're kind of relying on Emory Williams to get back from that arm injury, where he'll probably miss a majority of that spring practice and then be ready for 2024. If you're Mario Cristobal and you're that Hurricane staff, you probably want to get a veteran quarterback in there to provide some stability in that quarterback room. And this is the perfect opportunity to do so. You're not going to see many more experienced and dynamic quarterbacks than Will Rogers that can kind of run that Shannon Dawson offense as well from a fit schematically, from a fit personnel wise. I mean, I think Will Rogers makes the most sense at the Miami Hurricanes. Another program that I would be looking at, the Nebraska Cornhuskers. They went after a quarterback in the transfer portal last year in Jeff Sims. It didn't work out. Clearly, this is a Nebraska team that's very similar to Miami. It has been a team that's really lost a lot of games due to quarterback play. And so you look at the Nebraska Cornhuskers looking to have that quick turnaround in 2024, adding a quarterback at the caliber of Will Rogers would make a lot of sense. And you look at that quarterback room now, you have Henrik Harburg. Not really sure what Jeff Sims, if he's going to be with the program next year. You have Daniel Kaling coming in. You have Chuba Purdy. Will Rogers comes in, and in my mind, is by far the best quarterback that would be in that room. And he has a little experience running more of that pro-style offense that Coach Scott Satterfield wants to run. And so I think Nebraska would make a lot of sense. The next team I want to go to, the Auburn Tigers. This is another team that has a lot of talent. It's going to have a lot of talent with the recruiting class that Hugh Freeze is bringing in. And you look at some of the failures that Auburn has had on the offensive side of the ball, a lot of it has gone down to quarterback play. I mean, they came into the season not really kind of balancing and yo-yoing around with Peyton Thorne and Robbie Ashford. And I think the reason why that was happening was both of those quarterbacks, quite frankly, just were not that good. And so you bring in Will Rogers, who has experience in the SEC, who's played at an extremely high level in the SEC. Will Rogers comes in, immediately elevates that quarterback room, kind of a stopgap quarterback because you're going to have Walker White being a true freshman. What better quarterback for Walker White to sit behind, learn from, than Will Rogers, who's going into his fifth year, has played a ton of college football. That would, in my mind, set up the Auburn Tigers in a really good spot for that quarterback future, right? You have Will Rogers coming in for that fifth year, and then you have Walker White sitting and waiting in the wings to take over that offense. The Auburn Tigers missed on a quarterback in the transfer portal last cycle. This would not be a miss. I think this would be an absolute home run for Hugh Freeze. And again, a really attractive landing spot, a place that Will Rogers can go to within the SEC and kind of hit the ground running, because there's going to be some bones. There's going to be some talent in that Auburn offense. It's a great scheme under Hugh Freeze. You just need a quarterback that can execute the offense. Will Rogers, perfect fit for the Auburn Tigers. Two more I have, the Oregon Ducks. You have Bo Nix right now, Heisman Trophy winner in my opinion, but you're looking at Ty Thompson coming in or Austin Novosad, and if you don't have a ton of confidence in Austin Novosad being ready for year two, and if you don't have a ton of confidence in Ty Thompson being ready for year four, Will Rogers would be a guy that comes in and is kind of a perfect starter for that first year in the Big Ten. I think he can do a lot of the things Bo Nix does with the arm talent and with the athleticism and the ability to extend plays. And same conversation we had for the Miami Hurricanes. You're coming into a system under Coach Will Stein that's going to have a great offensive line, that's going to have a lot of pass catchers on the outside. If you're Will Rogers and the Oregon Ducks come calling, I mean, you're picking up that phone and you're really considering it works for Bo Nix, probably going to work for Will Rogers as well. And again, Ty Thompson, I've talked to a lot of Oregon fans. You guys have offered a lot of your input. Doesn't sound like he's the guy. It just sounds like the development hasn't necessarily been there. So Will Rogers seemingly a really good fit up in Eugene as they move to the Big Ten. Last one I have on my list, and if Notre Dame does want to go back to the well, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. They did a very similar thing last cycle going after Sam Hartman. This is a quarterback that I think resembles Sam Hartman in a lot of different ways, right? A veteran quarterback that's been playing since a true freshman, that has played a ton of football. He's a guy that comes in right away and kind of smooths the ship. And arguably, I mean, there were some question marks about Sam Hartman coming from Wake Forest. You saw some ugly games. You saw maybe some cap talent. Will Rogers, I don't think has that cap talent. I think Will Rogers arguably is a little better than Sam Hartman coming out of Mississippi State. Will Rogers at Notre Dame, I think would make a lot of sense too. Now, at the end of the day, I think Will Rogers represents an upgrade for a lot of teams at the Power 5 level. So if you are a team that is looking for that 1 year of juice from the quarterback position, Will Rogers is going to be extremely sought after. I'm very interested to see where he lands. If I'm guessing, he's going to be one of the more sought after quarterbacks in this transfer portal cycle. And more importantly, for teams that don't want to scare away other quarterbacks in the room, he's a guy that comes in 1 year with 1 year of eligibility and is not going to scare off some of the young quarterbacks in that quarterback room. So you have the ability to maintain your quarterback future while also upgrading the position in the 2025 or in the 2024 season. For those reasons, Will Rogers, an extremely sought after quarterback, excited to see where he ends up. We'll leave it at that. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas again. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.